Hey, it's Soul, with a few tales from the Crossroads, where I take your World of Warcraft stories and try to dramatize them. We have a few great tales to tell, so let's start telling them, yeah? Arlem writes, "Here's my story. I've had a love-hate relationship with WoW since vanilla. I first played right before the opening of Encourage, but a combination of being too shy to group and not being able to figure out what to do caused me to quickly give it up. I came back for the Burning Crusade and had the same problem and left again. I met my partner, who also plays, and he got me to come back mid-Wrath of the Lich King, and for the first time, I really enjoyed the game. I worked my way through the content and got my gear score almost high enough for the 3 ICC dungeons, but I was very much the unwashed scrub whose tune looked like she had got dressed in the dark. Know what I mean? I was standing around in Dalaran one day, and here is where the story starts. A guy whispered me about helping him win a bet that he had with another player. He was the guildmaster of his guild, and the other guy was an officer. The bet was that the guildmaster couldn't take an unwashed scrub, my term, not his, and get him raid ready gear-wise in a week. I could keep the gear for free and stay in the guild after it was over if I chose to. The bet was for 20 grand, and this was back when the gold cap was like 124 grand? I jumped at it. The idea that I might be able to get to see the inside of Ice Crown Citadel was just too tempting. At the end of the week, my little Blood Elf demo lock was shinied up like a new penny, and I decided to stay with the guild. And eventually, I got to raid ICC 25 with them as they had some open slots. I wasn't the best raider, but I gave it my best, and followed directions, and paid attention, and consistently showed up every Monday. I really wanted Abracadabra, but when it dropped, they gave it to a mage with better DPS who replaced it in the next raid, and then disappeared from the guild after that. Ugh. One night, there were only 20 of us, so they decided to split into 2 10s and see how we did. The guild leader and most of the officers and the better players were one team, and I was on the other, led by one officer. We did really well. We cleared the first 8 bosses like champs, and we're about to take on Sindragosa. I was so excited. I was gonna get to see Arthas. I might even get the much coveted Kingslayer title. Then it happened. Suddenly, there were 6 more players in the raid from the other team, who were coming in and taking over, the guildmaster and all of his top players. He said we were doing great, but they would take it from there, and 6 of us were kicked from the raid, myself included. The next day, in Dalaran, they were all there in a group, congratulating each other with their shiny new Kingslayer titles. I was mad, but didn't quit that guild until Cataclysm came out. By then, I was an unwashed scrub again. They had redone my class, and I was having a hard time getting used to the new stuff, and the dungeons were harder because everyone had complained they were too easy during Wrath. I quit them the day the guildmaster invited me to a run of Vortex Pinnacle. During it, he whispered me that he didn't understand why no one wanted to run with me. I wasn't that bad. That was it for me in that guild. I thanked him and quit. Worst guild experience for me ever. I left the game mid-Cataclysm. I came back for Pandaland and stayed a while, and left again. I completely skipped Warlords of Draenor. I came back for Legion and I loved it, until they gated progression through the Suramar storyline behind the end boss of a raid. Yay. I came back when I heard Sylvanas shout during the BFA cinematic and found that I could work through the content and see almost everything. I can't wait to see what happens next. Thanks for listening." Tegan wrote, "Best thing that happened during Legion, eh? I think it would be ending up in the guild that I'm in. It's not the story of a singular event, other than accepting that guild invites, but more the story of a change in how I play. At the beginning of the expansion, I was a super hardcore casual. I had several hunters who I wasted endless hours camping rares on, and my main was, and still is, a hunter. I fished a lot, and did pet battles, and collected transmog, and shunned human contact, and anything challenging. I didn't even want to do normal dungeons, let alone raid. Despite having played since Wrath of the Lich King, the only current content raiding I had done was it was a paid carry for a mount during Warlords of Draenor, and a little LFR. I slunk around on a backwater, low-pop server, and refused to even go near a high-pop server. I had reasons, I guess. But somewhere along the way, my girlfriend ended up in charge of a raiding guild. That's a whole other story in and of itself. She's always loved to raid and is damn good at most classes and roles. She somehow managed to get me to come to Normal Kill Jaden one night, and I didn't hate it. I went back again. Next thing I knew, I was transferring to a high-pop server and showing up for a raid 3 times a week. Ooh. This was an entirely new game to me. My understanding of my class and confidence in my ability to be adequate has dramatically improved. I've since leveled up the character of each class. Okay, the monk isn't quite there yet. And I'm developing a new appreciation for and understanding of the game as a whole. I even own and use a gaming mouse now. All those confusing buttons and everything, I hardly ever click and keyboard turn now. Don't get me wrong, I'm still a rubbish player and I still main a Beastmaster Hunter, but I found a whole new world of Warcraft. And our guild, it's amazing, truly amazing. I'm really happy that I got to spend so much of the expansion this way, and I'm excited to head into the next one with my eyes open and a great group of people around me. This next part is more of a stream highlight back from early April. Enjoy. It was November of last year. We're all of us who were there at Blizzcon just kind of, gathered around. We're anticipating all this stuff that's going on. We had just watched the introduction for Classic WoW, and when that happened, here it comes. And when that happened, the place, it was deafening. It was crazy because Classic is a hotly anticipated thing, even among people that go to BlizzCon, because people that go to BlizzCon tend to be very, very, into it WoW players. They tend to be anti-pirate, they want to celebrate WoW, but they understand that the anti-piracy stance is a fair one. Anyway, yeah, they're like blowing up. They're like fucking going nuts. So when they started the lead-in to the battle for Azeroth, and they brought in like the intro, not the intro cinematic, but the feature cinematic, all of us like, oh my god, this and this allied races, the place was once again totally blown up. And then when, shucks, was it J. Allen Brack? I forgot who it was that was on stage, but when they said, hey, we're going to show you the intro cinematic now, this, and they prefaced it with, we put a lot of love into it, we hope you enjoy it, blah, 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 here we go. And then they started playing it. At first, we didn't know what was, we didn't know what was going on. We didn't know what to expect at all. My biggest expectation leading up to it was, it's going to be a fucking world war. Everyone's going to be fighting each other for this Azerite stuff and all that. When you got to that point in the cinematic where Sylvanas started hopping down, already you started to hear the, because this is her really getting into it. And from a Horde perspective, this is a character who has always been, and probably still is, very aloof about her loyalty to the Horde and, and her defending it. Like, for her, it's like, whatever, they're just a means to an end, yada, yada, yada. But then when she blew that up, we're like, damn, badass. When she turned into the Banshee thing, all of us are like, I'm mostly speaking for myself and like the relative thing that I was hearing. I was like, shit, she went Banshee, oh my god, because you don't see that. We haven't seen that really. She's always fighting in her humanoid form. It almost makes you emotional thinking about it, because that's how effective it was for the crowd. When she reverted back and then she did her For the Horde cry, you'll notice in the cinematic that for just a brief moment it's like kind of quiet, because it's leading up to when it zooms in on Saurfang, and then the whole welling up of emotions. That's what everyone was feeling there too, because it was quiet. It was quiet for just that moment. And then when Saurfang rallied up, there were people jumping out of there were people coming out of their seats going, oh fuck yeah, People were just losing their minds. So to follow up on that though, when Anduin did his whole throwing the sword down, and when he threw his hands up, you know, looking up to the light and looking up to the sky, once again people were like coming out, oh my god, he's doing this, blah blah blah. And when he did his whole for the Alliance thing, once again, you know, people were jumping out of the seats and going, oh, fuck yeah. And that energy just kept building up when you started to see like when you started to see the Horde and Alliance crashing together. And like, you should have been there. I'll tell you folks this, like, it's one of the coolest moments of a BlizzCon is being there whenever they do a new WoW expansion, because the excitement and the hype, it's still somewhere in here right now, because it's unforgettable, because you're surrounded by literally tens of thousands of people who enjoy this game as much as you probably do, maybe. So when you get that sort of energy all in one spot, and you drop a bomb, like a reveal like that, it's an unforgettable feeling that makes that, for me, makes that money and the time that it takes to get yourself to that point and that moment, it makes it worth it. So those were today's tales, and I was extremely happy to share them with you. Obviously, I love sharing and narrating these stories, and I'd love to keep doing it. So if you have your own tale to tell, and if you haven't noticed, the more dramatic, the better, share it in a comment, or you can send it to me via email in a link that I'm going to have somewhere in the description. Thanks again for watching. I hope you had fun, and if you did, please like and share this video, or subscribe and support the channel the best way you know how, because I love doing what I'm doing, and I don't want to stop. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, and stay breezy.